$8 billion. Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera, Hollywood.
Well, the Oscar favourite, The King's Speech, has focused attention on stuttering, a speech impediment that affects millions of people across the globe. Al Jazeera's Tom Ackerman reports from the US state of Indiana on what researchers have learned about its causes and its treatment.
Don't tell me it's my stammer.
It's my field. I can assure you no infant starts to speak with a stammer.
The cinematic version of how King George VI of Britain learned how to overcome his speech impediment.
Yeah, but we're going to have a dog.
But in fact, as many as 5% of all young children do suffer from a stutter, though most grow out of it naturally. At Purdue University in the Midwest state of Indiana, researchers analyzed the brain activity of young stutterers. Their conclusion?
There's probably very subtle things going on in the connections between different areas in the brain. We also know that there's, for some people, a genetic component. But the genetic component doesn't explain stuttering entirely, because you can have identical twins where one stutters and one doesn't.
Just to catch our stutters.
Therapist Bill Murphy teaches patients how to manage their stutter by learning various techniques.
When we make that sound, when we make it longer and slower, that's what busts up the stutter.
Another way to cope, by visualizing the stammer as a clay figure and pounding away at it.
Gonna smash it?
Yeah, I'm gonna smash the thing.
Smash that thing. Oh, hard. Oh. Throw it against the blackboard. Oh, that sucker. Come on. Come on.
Researchers say traumatic events don't cause stuttering, but they can certainly aggravate the condition.
And so if somebody has a predisposition to stutter, there may be situations where they stutter more because of their emotional reactions to that.
The experts' advice for parents of stammerers: don't try to ignore the problem.
So when they're tripping in their speech, it's better to reassure them rather than saying, no, we're not going to talk about this and we're going to pretend like nothing's happening.
Purdue graduate student Karen Herring says a life of stuttering is something she has learned to live with.
If somehow there was like a magical pill, I mean, it would be great not to deal with it anymore. But at the same time, it's definitely made me who I am, and I wouldn't take back the experiences that I've had.
Now Karen looks forward to helping other stutterers by becoming a speech therapist. Tom Ackerman, Al Jazeera, West Lafayette, Indiana.
Before we go, NASA has released images of an enormous solar flare last week. It lasted 90 minutes, look at that, and shot out a huge eruption of plasma. And it's known as a solar prominence, and the scale of it is just incredible. The flare was the latest in a series of sunstorms this month, and scientists say the eruption was aimed away from the Earth and not expected to pose any disruptions to satellites or power grids. That would warm your bones, wouldn't it? Just to say that Rob Reynolds will be here with all the Oscar news, live from LA, and we'll see then if The King's Speech does indeed win, as it probably should. Back to you, Anand.
Thanks, Nick. And stay with Al Jazeera. We'll have plenty more after the break, including the latest from the Cricket World Cup. That's coming up. Stay with us.
To invest in a country with nearly 450,000 university graduates per year, please push the button. For more power to your global business, invest in Turkey.
If you're a Nokia user, you can download Al Jazeera's news widget from Nokia's Ovis store. The news widget, available on compatible Nokia devices, gives users quick and easy access to real-time news updates from Al Jazeera English. See the world in real time. Al Jazeera Mobile.
He's taken stolen goods and he's now dumping them onto the world without any sort of consideration for consequences.
From people making the news.
If the North will be saved a lot of trouble, I think it is important that they should come together.
To those it affects.
We do accept that there was very bad mistakes made in our banking area.
Behind the headlines.
Most South Koreans are not interested in reunification.
Is the inside story. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Information travels in many ways. Knowledge passes in an instant.
If you want to communicate with those shaping the headlines, this is your chance to ask questions directly to the people making the news. Riz Khan, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Let's start with cricket. India and England played out a sensational match at the World Cup on Sunday to bring the event well and truly to life. India set England a winning total of 339, and the game, well, it went all the way to the very last ball. From Bangalore, Andy Richardson reports.
It was the match all India seemed to have been waiting for. The co-hosts taking on England, and a feeling this tournament was now really lifting off. Indian fans hoping their side could take another step to becoming the first team to win the world title in front of home support. India batted first, and once again it was Sachin Tendulkar leading the way for his country, easing his way to a 47th one-day century. He scored 120 as India took control. MS Dhoni and Yuvraj Singh then paired up to inflict yet more damage on England's attack. England did hit back with late wickets, but India's total of 338 looked formidable. In reply, England captain Andrew Strauss looked more than up for the task. He settled in to score his first ever World Cup century. England in with a chance. Ably assisted by Ian Bell, Strauss's England were making India look old and ordinary in the field. But late wickets were then to tumble, England stumbling when in sight of victory. 14 were needed off the final over, 2 off the last ball, only 1 was scored, so the match finished in a tie. A pulsating game, finishing with points shared.
I think both the teams will be a bit disappointed, but still, they will be a bit relieved to take 1 point out of which, because I think both the team in this game, were facing defeat at a point of time.
We've got to celebrate the fact it was an unbelievable game of cricket. Probably the best advert for 50-over format you could possibly get. So, some great performances on both sides. Both sides will be partly happy, partly sad.
Right off the 50-over game at your peril. Only this format can produce the ebb and flow of momentum and tension we've seen in this match. India's bowling looked as fragile as their batting looked flawless. England will feel they should have pushed themselves over the winning line. One thing's for sure, this Cricket World Cup is well and truly alive. Andy Richardson, Al Jazeera, Bengaluru.
Now football. Inter Milan are now just 2 points behind Italian Serie A leaders and City rivals AC Milan after a 2-0 victory at Sampdoria on Sunday. Wesley Sneijder and Samuel Eto'o scored Inter's goals. But fourth place Lazio couldn't keep up with Inter as they lost out at Cagliari. The only goal of the game came 5 minutes before half-time. Lazio's Andre Diaz putting the ball into his own net to gift Cagliari the 1-0 victory. New Roma coach Vincenzo Montella's first match in charge ended in a draw against Parma. Francesco Totti scored an early penalty to give Roma the lead before Juan Dos Santos put the home side 2-up at half-time from a corner. But Parma came back strongly in the second half. Amaury Carvalho scored both their goals as the match ended 2-2. In Sunday's other games in Italy, bottom side Bari drew at home with Fiorentina, while fifth place Udinese, they thrashed Palermo by 7-0. Alexis Sanchez scored 4 and Antonio Di Natale also got a hat-trick for Udinese. In England, Birmingham City won their first domestic trophy in almost half a century thanks to a shock victory over Arsenal in the English League Cup final. Birmingham's recent signing Obafemi Martins turned out to be the match winner as Arsenal's 6-year trophy drought continues.
The first major silverware of the season in England up for grabs at Wembley, and few observers gave relegation-threatened Birmingham City a hope against Arsenal. But it was they who took the lead on 28 minutes. Giant striker Nikola Zigic able to convert Roger Johnson's flick-on from a corner kick. It didn't take Arsenal long to get back on level terms though, 11 minutes in fact, as Andrei Arshavin crossed for Robin van Persie to volley the equaliser. In a superb second half, Arsenal looked the more likely winners. But with extra time looming, Zigic flicked the ball on for substitute Obafemi Martins. The Nigerian, who'd only been on the pitch 6 minutes, took advantage of miscommunication in the Arsenal defence to win the League Cup for his side. Contrasting emotions at the final whistle for Birmingham manager Alex McLeish and his Arsenal counterpart Arsene Wenger, as Arsenal's 6-year trophy drought continues. But Birmingham's players and fans won't care about that as they celebrate their club's first major trophy in almost 50 years. There are also 2 matches in the English Premier League on Sunday. West Ham United are off the bottom of the table after a victory over Liverpool. West Ham captain Scott Parker scored one of the goals in his side's 3-1 home victory. In the other game, Manchester City slipped further back in the title race as they could only draw at home against Fulham. Now on to Spain's Primera División, where third place Valencia have been in action at Athletic Bilbao on Sunday. 2 goals in 10 minutes looked to have turned this match around for Valencia after Bilbao took a half-time lead. Jonas with their second goal. They now lead 2-1 with just a few minutes remaining. Fourth place Villarreal were 2 points behind Valencia heading into their match at Racing Santander, but the away side had to twice come back from a goal down to earn a draw. Nilmar scored Villarreal's second equaliser in stoppage time as the match ended 2-2. And in skiing, Austria's Mario Matt won his first World Cup slalom event in nearly 2 years in Bulgaria on Sunday. Matt clocked the fastest time in the first run and then held off a strong challenge from compatriot and eventual runner-up Reinfred Herbst. Ivica Kostelic skied out in the first leg of the event, but he still leads the overall slalom standings. That's the sport. It's back to Anand.
Thanks, Guy, and stay with us here on Al Jazeera. We'll update the headlines after the break. We'll also be talking to an official from Islamic Relief about supplies they're trying to get into the Libyan city of Benghazi. We'll have that, and a reminder that you can also keep up to date with all the news on our website. Lots more details and all the stories we're covering. You'll find that at aljazeera.net/English.
From local traders to international finance, it's commerce that makes the world go round. For global companies and developing markets, communication is the currency, and information is the most valuable commodity. Counting the cost at this time on Al Jazeera.
Muammar Gaddafi vows to stay in Libya as his supporters take to the streets just outside the capital. I'm Anand Naidu. This is Al Jazeera live from Doha with extended coverage of the uprising in Libya. Also ahead, anti-government forces controlling Az-Zawiya, 50 kilometers from Tripoli, prepare for a pro-Gaddafi counterattack. And fresh violence breaks out in the capital Tunis as Tunisia's interim Prime Minister Mohamed Ghannouchi resigns. Police in Oman shoot rubber bullets at stone-throwing protesters, killing 2. Government buildings and cars are set ablaze. Libya's leader Muammar Gaddafi has again pledged to stay in the country. In his latest interview, this time with a Serbian television station, he repeated his claims that foreigners and Al-Qaeda are to blame for the violence. And the Libyan leader still has some support just outside the capital. Gaddafi loyalists took to the streets, waving posters and chanting slogans. Outside the city of Az-Zawiya in western Libya, there were similar scenes. The city centre is in anti-government hands, but reports say pro-Gaddafi forces are preparing to launch a counter-offensive. Jackie Rowland reports.
The town of Az-Zawiya lies just 50 kilometres to the west of Tripoli. Now it has become a new front line in the battle between pro and anti-Gaddafi forces. These pictures were shot by journalists brought here by the regime. The idea was to show the outside world that Gaddafi is still in control here. Instead, the reporters found that Az-Zawiya was in rebel hands, at least for now. The town is surrounded by pro-Gaddafi forces. Both sides are armed with tanks and anti-aircraft guns. Gaddafi's crackdown against